Newton News continues its candidate profiles to help inform the voters of where each challenge candidate stands on certain issues. Newton News spoke with school committee member incumbent Kathleen Shields about her campaign to be reelected as the Ward 7 school committee member. She is running against newcomer Valerie Pontiff.
In the upcoming elections for Newton School Committee, only one contested race has an incumbent, and that incumbent is Kathleen Shields, who represents Ward 7. As a school committee member, Shields is responsible for maintaining communication with the public about what goes on in Newton schools and reviewing the district's budget.
Once a year, we evaluate, ask questions about, and ultimately vote on whether to approve the district's budget. We usually do that in the March-April timeframe. The budget that we approve then goes to the City Council, who votes on our budget as part of the overall city budget. So they usually do that a little bit after we approve our budget for the year. The evaluation of the superintendent, we do every year we do it formally in May and June, and then we compile each school committee member's response into a group evaluation document that gets submitted to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Shields was first elected to the school committee in 2018, and all three of her children are in Newton schools. She says by 2022, her children will be in middle, elementary, and high school respectively. Unlike City Council, Shields says that running for school committee feels very different from that experience, and that when she's reaching out to voters, she doesn't feel like a traditional politician.
I mean, there are a number of time-tested ways to do that. You reach out to your own networks, you find people with their own networks and try to get them to put you in front of their friends. You go to public events, you speak at candidate forums. But I think I'm sort of in an interesting position this year, being the only incumbent in a contested race. I think the last 18 months have been far more divisive in our city than school committee and sort of city political issues previously to that. And so I think it's sort of an interesting position in which to be running for re-election as the only incumbent.
One important relationship that the school committee has is with the superintendent, David Fleischman. Fleischman's job is to draft out how he wants Newton schools to function. This includes hiring principals, creating educational programs, and most importantly, spending. Shields says that the relationship between the committee and Fleischman is strong, and says it's similar to how a CEO runs a company.
I mean, I think the relationship with the current superintendent and the school committee is sort of the relationship between a board and the CEO of a company. It's somewhat analogous to that. We sit as an advisory group or an advisory board to the Newton Public Schools, and he's the person charged with management of the Newton Public Schools.
This year, Shields notes that there have been some hard challenges for Newton Public Schools, including 2 incidents at Burr Elementary where racial slurs were used towards students. This set off outrage in the community, but incidents such as this one are becoming more and more common in Newton. Shields says that the school committee has been taking steps in order to counter these incidents and communicate to the public that a broader policy will be created on bullying and targeting.
I think Newton is not isolated from a lot of the hate that exists in our world. And I think those incidents happen, both racially targeted, religiously targeted, sometimes gender targeted. And I think there are a couple of different things we've been doing to try to handle those incidents better. We recently revised our bullying and harassment policy. We did that last spring. We are going to hear on Monday evening about the revised protocol. So policy documents are sort of broader and more general. They talk about what it is we want to do. Procedure documents talk about sort of how you do that. And so we've revised those policies, and we're going to be discussing them over the next couple meetings. Ultimately, we're going to, once a policy and a protocol are adopted, we're going to push that out both to school staff and to the parent communities.
School boards and school committees have gained national attention this year, as debates regarding vaccination and mask mandates, as well as critical race theory, have caused conflict and noise in communities which have raised headlines in the media ecosystems. As a member herself, Shields expresses sympathy and worries towards those who are also in school committees and school boards. But she says that she isn't letting this get to her, even in the face of frustrated parents who are worried about their kids and the upcoming school year.
I think it's been a really hard 18 months to 2 years to be a school committee or school board member. I think we are lucky in Newton not to have some of the extreme polarization about what we consider to be basic health and safety measures, like mask wearing, vaccine mandates. Those seem to be things that most people here understand and support, and we don't face some of the sort of the intense vitriol and fear for our physical safety that many of our colleagues in other states are experiencing.
Adam Bass, Newton News, Newton Center.